Hello, welcome back to another episode of Energy of the Untamed Heart podcast. I am Yell Fox, your host, and today my guest is Sam Ritchie. She's a fascinating woman with decades of experience in clearing negative energies from spaces. I would assume that means offices, houses, dooryards, whatever, to make for a better environment for whoever is going to be utilizing that space. So I find this very fascinating because I do believe in generational energies being brought forward along to where we are currently. And I believe that sometimes there are energies that stay in spaces long after the human resident has gone by. So I'm fascinated by all of this. And Sam is also an angel guide, an oracle card reader. The list goes on and on. So without getting too crazy into the details, I'm just going to welcome Sam on the show and we're going to have a little wee chat. Sam, welcome.
Hi. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And you have a book out as well that I'm really curious about. So we're going to talk about that too. But let me just ask you what brought you to I am an effective conduit for clearing energy in spaces?
Totally by accident. So, as a child, I really lived in the spirit world more than the human world. Humans terrified me. If the doorbell rang, I hid. I was petrified. And at the age of, I guess, about 12, I was like, this is not how I want to live my life. So I pushed through that. And well, in fact, I've not stopped pushing the comfort zone since. And so then I became an estate agent. And unbeknownst to me, every time there was a property that wouldn't sell, if I entered it, it'd suddenly sell. And I came across some spirits while I was doing that, and I just moved them on, just because I thought this was really normal and that everyone did it, but apparently not. It wasn't until about that time when I was an estate agent, it was probably someone I worked with, said to me, you do realize not everyone can see the things that you can see. And I honestly had no clue. I thought everyone could see it. So roll on a few years and 2 kids later, and I met a woman, and I knew our house had negative energy. I knew there was no spirits there because I couldn't see them, they just weren't there. But it was a dark house. It had a very dark history, which I could see, but I didn't know what to do about it. And I was talking to this friend who was spiritual, and she said, oh, you want to do space clearing on that? And I'd never heard of space clearing, and it was before Google was a thing. So I couldn't just go into Google and look it up. So I started space clearing, and I got so much information about the house and what had happened there. And I excitedly told my friend, and she went, you do realize people don't normally see what they're clearing. Well, of course, I just thought that was totally normal again. So after that, I space cleared every house we've lived in, and I space cleared for friends and acquaintances if they said that they had a problem with a bad smell or things moving, then I would go along and space clear their house. And then it was lockdown, and I suddenly found I had loads of time on my hands. So I started doing Carl Gray's courses and became a certificated angel guide, and probably did about 200 free oracle card readings. And then people started wanting to give me money. And I'm like, I could feed my family doing this. So that's what I started doing. I put on my website space clearing, thinking it was a really limited market. I live in rural Spain. Obviously, I'm English, but I live in rural Spain now. It's a very limited market. I've got to be able to get there. And a friend who had a holiday home that I space cleared probably 10 years before that contacted me and said, I've got this property. It was my grandparents' house, and I've got tenants in it. It needs essential maintenance. Otherwise, it's going to cause serious problems, and the tenants will not let me in. Will you space clear it? The tenants won't let me in, so I can't even take you around with the phone or anything. She's in the UK. And she said, can you do it from a floor plan and an address? And I said, Honestly, I have no idea, but I'm prepared to give it a go. So I did. I drew the plan out, and as I was drawing it, I started getting all this information about the house, including her grandparents' names. But the most remarkable thing was within 24 hours, and it wasn't even 24 hours, she excitedly contacted me because the tenants had agreed to have the work done and all the ball started rolling. I was like, okay, I can do this. So it became very clear, and that's a big game changer because it means that I am not limited to places that I can get to. It also means I don't have to move house again because we've moved house an awful lot. And I'm sure that's because I had to clear the energies.
Interesting. So,
So,
what I
yeah,
do find really fascinating is you obviously have a very unique gift. You're very capable and able of, whether it's visualizing or some other one of the senses comes through for you, but yet there was a window of time where you believed you needed to physically be present in the space in order to clear, which,
yeah,
forgive me for saying this as bluntly as I'm going to say it, but in my world, I really believe that all energies are connected to all other energies. That it's not
totally.
like you have to physically be there, right? So to me, I'm like, well, if you believe that all the energies are therefore connected, then the idea that you could clear distance, let's say, from somewhere else, from another country, from some other area, makes sense to me as long as there is some mm, conduit or pathway that allows you to be able to tap in, so to speak. And if I
Yeah,
hear you correctly, I hear you saying as long as you have an address and or floor plan and or something that would help you to identify or connect to the energies associated with a given space, that you're able to continue your work. Does
yeah,
that sound
yeah. I
right?
just need
Yeah.
to, yeah, I need something so that my angels and guides know where I'm trying to space clear.
Yes. So this also strikes me so interesting because I have an acquaintance who is an animal behaviorist and animal communicator. And what she does for her clients is she just requires an image of her client's pet that allows her to see their eyes, because she feels that that is the doorway, the pathway, the entryway to a communication soul to soul. And that is, so again, she also does distance because where we live, like you, not so easy. We're a lot of distance between everything. And so again, it just clicked for me like, oh, this is so interesting. You're saying you require some kind of something to allow the angels and other guides to kind of zone in, if you want to call it that. And this other
Yeah,
gal does something similar through visual. So this
yeah,
really fascinates me that the portals of energetic communication that come through to all of us in some way are coming through various modalities, whatever that is, whether that is GPS points or photo image. Or let me ask you this. Do you find when you are clearing space, for example, the grandparents in the home, do
yeah.
you find that you tap into the existence of where they were in the life that they held at the time that they were in the space? Do you follow? Like it could be prior to this year, it could be 100 years ago, let's say, or some other
Yeah,
previous.
it depends because I'm pretty sure some of the spirits, they were coming in, they were not stuck there. They were not earthbound spirits. They were coming in to give their love. And some have been earthbound, but it depends on the spirit, how they show themselves. And
Mhm.
sometimes they try to be sneaky and hide. And so, but they don't get away with that because my angels and guides are like, nah, now is the time that you no longer going to be earthbound. And I
So,
also
what
going back
creates
to what you,
earthbounding?
so earthbounding can be a traumatic death, not knowing they're dead. That's a fairly common one, or
Huh?
control. If they were
Okay.
not particularly nice in life, they can sometimes be reluctant to give up the control that they had over other people. So that's why a lot of the, not all, but a lot of the spirits I come across were not nice, because they do not
Uh-huh.
want to give up that control. The nice
Okay.
ones that are stuck, it's because they either don't know they're dead or they had a very traumatic death.
So, excuse my naivete, but how does one not know one is dead? How does
If
one's soul not recognize that their earthly window has
Yeah,
closed?
yeah, exactly how, I'm not sure. But it seems to be if it was a very sudden death, if suddenly they just didn't wake up,
Ah,
then they're not aware that now is the time to move on. And I'm not quite sure how that happens, because normally an angel or a relative would come and help the soul go. So I'm not 100% sure why they would not. No, it could just be stubbornness, of course,
hmm.
but
And then,
I am not 100% sure about that one.
sure. And then could I ask you, because I'm not very familiar with exactly what occurs at one's time of transition, but having not terribly long ago lost a family member, I'm very curious. Does one's soul and spirit always have an escort, shall we say, when leaving?
In my experience, I watched my mum die, and I
Mm,
literally saw her soul leave her body. And it was probably the first time I saw an angel, this amazingly bright light, this bright, wispy being come and take her soul away. So that's my experience of that. So why that wouldn't happen, I'm not sure, but I would imagine that in most cases that happens.
mm, just very interesting. My experience bedside wasn't quite as you described, but mm, it wasn't as if there wasn't anything else occurring at the moment. It
Yeah,
wasn't just the physical visual, here's what I see before me, like a light switch, we're on, we're off. It wasn't like that. And I don't, now that I think about it, I don't quite know that I have the exact words to describe, but there was an absolute shift in the energy of the room, the feeling within the room. It was very palpable to me. To me, I can't
yeah,
speak for everybody, but to me, it was
yeah.
very palpable. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I would
Interesting.
think that anyone who is sensitive to energies would find, even if they don't see anything, they would feel that shift.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Interesting. So when people who seek you out, do you find that these are individuals who, I'm at my wit's end, there's something going on in the space that I'm in, and I don't know what to do? Or do you find that, like your friend who was the landlady for a given property, that the tenants perhaps are unaware, but the landlady was aware?
Yeah, well, it can be a number of different reasons. I've had people come to me because they've had trouble sleeping, random smells that just pop up and are not very nice, things moving. I work with estate agents with properties that don't sell. So the owner, because I always work for the highest good of everyone, the owner of the house doesn't actually need to know that I've space cleared the house, because it's for the greatest good and under the law of grace. So what else? So, and also I've had people that come just because they're interested to know if the history they've heard about their house is true. Now, I don't, when
Ah,
I do the space clearing, I don't want to know anything, right? If you're selling your property, I want to know that. If you've got trouble sleeping, I want to know that. But I don't want to know anything else. I want to know why you've come to me so that I can program the house to help with that issue. But I don't want to know any of the history at all. And
interesting.
it's
Yeah,
better
yeah.
for me as well if I
Sure.
don't know the area,
Sure.
because then I can't make a, my ego won't get in the way and make a judgment.
Sure. Sure, sure. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So I mean, you have multiple areas of expertise between the angel guide and oracle and space clearing, and it's kind of funny as I was glancing through your website, I'm like, oh, she's like this multifaceted person who has all these different skills. This is amazing. But do you find that you draw to one more so than the other, or they're a little bit interwoven with one another?
Yeah, they're
Like, are
definitely
your
interwoven.
interwoven? Yeah, yeah. So when you say that you clear, do you bring in these other components, or do you serve as the conduit to bring in other spirits, angels, and other guides and say, here we
Yeah,
are, we're at location XYZ, I'm calling you in. And so
yeah.
you're sort of the go between, if you want to call it that.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm just the human that they need to do the human bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
They do the work. I'm just the body they use.
Yes.
But
Yeah,
it's
yeah. Oh,
all
that's all right.
yeah, it's always the angels and my guides that I use, and it is the same when I do oracle card readings. As far as I'm concerned, yeah, they may be slightly different, but they still are doing the same job. Do you see what I mean? They're helping guide
Mm-hmm.
people. They're helping
Mm-hmm.
to get rid of stuff for people as well. And
Sure.
sometimes I use the cards when I'm space clearing, if they
That
tell
was
me
going to
to.
be my next question. Do you find that those two pieces go hand in hand, that the card using the cards as a conduit or as a modality to bring forward the information
Yeah.
facilitates the clearing?
Yeah, not often, but
Yeah.
sometimes. If they tell me to, then I do. I do what
Mm-hmm.
they tell me to do.
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
so yeah, sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. But as far as I'm concerned, they they are connected. They are connected.
Yes. Yeah. Interesting. Just fascinating. And if you have to clear a space, do you have to go, do you ever have situations or instances where you have to go back to that same space?
Yes. Yeah. Depends how many layers there are. I had a property and I didn't actually believe in demons until I did this property. And it was a remote one and I knew that I had to go back because there was a portal to some really nasty demonic energy. And I was like, okay, so you're just trying to tell me actually demons do exist. Because okay, no such thing as demons. And they go, yeah, there is. Here you go. So that
Interesting.
property I've done a few times. Also, we bring energy in with us. So there's been a couple of times when I've gone back to properties because the client said, I think I brought something in, or the energy's changed in my house. My daughter lives in a flat with other people, and they definitely bought stuff in. So I do hers regularly because obviously they've got free will. You can't
Hmm.
say don't do that when you're sharing a house with someone. So they were playing with Ouija boards when they didn't understand what they were doing.
Huh? We all
So
did that as kids, didn't we? Right?
no, I got thrown out of the room because I was laughing too much. I couldn't understand why you needed a Ouija board. So I got thrown
Right?
out because I thought it was
Ah,
hilarious. But yeah, yeah, young people do these things, but they don't know what they're playing with, and these girls don't know what they're playing with. So my daughter will go, Mum, my flat needs space clearing again. So that one I do fairly frequently.
yeah.
um, and that's what happens when you share a space with other people. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, so yeah, yes is the answer to that question. Yes, there is properties that I have to revisit, and also if the problem isn't resolved in the time frame I think it should be. So if a property hasn't sold really quickly after I space cleared it, that's not good enough for my humanness. And so I tend to revisit those as well.
Interesting. And when I'm trying to think how to ask the question I'm trying to ask. When you revisit, do you find that it is a revisit for a similar or same energy or entity or being or situation? Or do you find it's like peeling a layer? Like maybe, oh, I don't know, maybe there was a different generation with a situation in that same domicile, let's say.
Yeah, no,
You
it
see,
can,
you
it's
understand what
more
I'm
like,
asking?
yeah, I understand what you're asking. It's more like peeling an onion. It's more like there's
Mm.
layers. And depending on the history of the property or the land, because the land holds the energy too. Sometimes it can make no sense at all. It was actually an in-person one, and I came across a caveman where obviously the house wasn't there when the caveman was, but he was still there, and he was really angry that these people were living on his land. So,
Ah,
but it's like peeling an onion. So what else has happened? What else has happened? So normally with space clearing, we get to what is holding the property back, what is holding the occupants back straight away. But sometimes there's layers that are just, it needs to be done more than once. And if it needs to be done more than once, it gets done more than once
mm-hmm.
for the same price.
Interesting. So, yes. So when you ask your guides to come in, so we'll take the example where there's something going on and it's about maybe they weren't such wonderful beings in life and there's control or less than admirable energy going on.
Yep.
How, I'm not sure if this is, I don't know how to ask this. How does the removal actually occur? Because, and here's kind of the question, if you have angels and spirits who are on the, let's call it the good side, just for the conversation, and they're there to help clear space because there's another energy that is, let's say, not so good,
Yep.
then what is occurring? What is the mechanism, so to speak, by which the clearing is able to occur if it is a little bit of a battle of energetic will, so to speak?
Okay. So let me first of all say that it doesn't have to be a spirit or an entity that's in the property. It can be a memory. So it can be, I think of it like clay. The biggest handprint makes the biggest mark. And that's like an energetic handprint on the property. So it doesn't have to be a spirit or an entity. It can just be the property holding the memory.
Ah, okay.
Um, I also believe that anyone and everyone can space clear. So I will tell you how we do that. Right. So first of all, I always set the intention. Your intention's key. You have to protect your energy. There is a free meditation on my website, Protecting Your Energy. Before you even consider space clearing, protect your energy. Put yourself in a spiritual bubble of protection. And don't do it if you're scared. and and then I always say a prayer. So I ask, and it's all laid out in my book as well. I ask for the angels and guides to reveal what I need to know. So they might not reveal anything. That doesn't happen often, but they might not. Or they might reveal everything because that's what I need to know for that client. Then I start with clapping, and everyone should try this at home, because if you clap around your house, you can actually hear the energy change. So try that at home, guys. So you can hear the physical change in the sound of your clapping. I call it an altar. It's not really, it's just a space where I have my stuff. So I have crystals, candle, singing bowl, bells, and incense. And that's in one place. And that could be in the entrance hall, or it could be just where feels right for me. And then, so I do the clapping first. Then I use sage and Palo Santo. I burn those and going around the whole room. So the areas you can't get to, like the corners of the ceiling, use your intention to throw that energy up there, because that's where energy is stagnant as well. But obviously we can't get to the corners of ceilings easily. So you have to use your intention. So use those two things. And that's normally where I get the most information, is when I do that. And then I use bells to change the energy again with sound, and a singing bowl to calm the energy, because that just really makes it nice and harmonious. And then I program the property. And I do that by thanking the angels and guides for clearing any negativity, any memory, any entities, spirits that were there, even if I haven't seen any, just in case they were hiding, because sometimes they hide. And then I program the property. So if someone's just come to me because they're interested, I would program the property to be healthy, happy, and abundant. If a property is on the market and wants to sell, I program it for the perfect buyer to come along quickly and to pay a good price for the property, and for them to be healthy, happy, and abundant. So I always program the property to be healthy, happy, and abundant for whoever lives in it, for the greatest good of all. And that's it. But sort of that's it. It
You're
takes me a
so
while.
funny, Sam. And that's it. That's a lot. That's a lot, right? Yeah. Yeah. Oh, this is so fascinating. Tell us about your book.
Okay, so my book, Echoes Within Walls, walks you through the very basics of how to space clear. It also gives you some of the case studies of properties I've cleared. So you get to meet the caveman. There's a couple of, I've had the privilege of space clearings to, well, a hotel and a palace near where I live. That's pretty cool. And you get to meet the demons as well. So yeah, it's a whole bag of different spirits and businesses and private houses that you get to meet in my book.
Oh, cool. So, it's so interesting to me that I think there is, well, I'm going to say it. I don't want to speak for the whole world here, but I think when people hear phrases like space clearing, they think, oh, woody woody woo woo. But yet,
Yeah,
there are multiple books and tutorials and video and you name it on things like feng shui. Like
yeah,
design your room like this, put your furniture like that, open your window like this. And why, when you dig deep, like why would one do that? It's because it sets the room up for better flow of energies through the whatever, the room, the house, the whatever.
yeah,
So it's
yeah.
almost
That's
right.
why
So
my
there's
desk,
one, yeah,
faces the door, because I'm inviting clients into me,
yes.
towards me, even though a lot of my work's online.
Sure, but it's really interesting that there's a almost a perceptual discord, if you want to call it that, between what do I do in my space to set it up for more positive energetic event, meaning do I feng shui my house, let's say, and then if you say, oh, but the flip side or the not opposite, but a different perspective of that same energetic concept is, oh, you've got some bad stuff in here. We need to clear. And
Yeah.
do you find that there's, let's say, a difference in perception or acceptance perception when someone says space clear versus set it up feng shui? I'm just using feng shui as an example because that's what comes to me so
Yeah,
quickly.
I touch on that in my book. I am not an
Mm,
expert by any stretch of the imagination, but occasionally I was working with a businessman and his desk was facing the wall. His business was struggling, but his office was too small to turn the desk around. So I was told to use feng shui and put a mirror behind his desk so that he could still see the door to invite in clients. So it does go hand in hand. I'm not an expert. So if you want an
sure.
expert in feng shui, I'm not your girl.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's more widely known. And what my hope is with my book is that space clearing will become more widely known. And people will realize that actually, if everything is energy, which I believe it is, then it makes sense that objects will have a memory and properties will have a memory. We've all walked into somewhere and gone, "Oh, I don't like it in here," or "Oh, I think they've just had an argument," because it feels off.
Right.
And again, we've all walked into places and it doesn't even have to be clean and tidy and gone, "Oh, you know what? I like it here." There's no real reason. It just feels good. So if we look at it from that viewpoint, then space clearing makes total sense because everyone,
Does.
whether you're on a spiritual path or not, has had that feeling when they've walked into somewhere and got, "Oh God, I don't like it here."
Yes. Yes. It's the same for many of us. It's that same feeling whether you walk into a space or you meet somebody, just someone you
Yeah,
haven't come across before. Sometimes, I get like an instant, oh,
yeah,
not
yeah.
enough
I
that I
don't.
turn and run, but enough that I'm like, whoa, this doesn't feel good to me. Yeah. Or you
Yeah,
you
I'm gonna
shake a
keep them
hand
at
and you're
arm's
like,
length.
oh, this
Yeah,
doesn't feel good to me, or this feels good to me, whichever it may be. So obviously, to me, again, like you, I believe energy is in everything: the earth, the house, all of it, the plants, everything.
everything.
So
Yeah,
to me, it makes sense that it holds energetic information and memory and presence. And if you think about the way we humans live now, we build houses and castles and tree forts and whatever it is, but what do we build it on? We build it on the earth, obviously. That's why we're here.
yeah,
And that earth within itself holds a history.
yeah,
And so it's not very different than if you go to a lot of indigenous populations where they prepare a site with ritual.
yeah.
If they're
And
going
they've been
to
doing it. They've been
forever.
doing it forever. You look at
Yes.
any ancient civilization, that's not the right word, you know what I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
community, and they have
Yes.
their own rituals for clearing the energy, whether it be salt or building on, not building on ley lines and things like that. All of these things have come down for from forever. It's just
Yes.
that modern life has gone, "Oh no, that's all witchy and woo woo," and but that's not true. This is ancient wisdom. This is ancient
Yes.
wisdom. Been using it forever.
Yeah. Oh, this is so fascinating. Oh my gosh. So, folks want to either catch you for an oracle reading or have you come clear some space remotely or however, unless I happen to be in Spain. But, what's the best way for them to reach out and get a hold of you?
Yeah, but they can find me on my website, which is samangelguide.com, or Facebook, Sam Angel Guide, Instagram, Sam Angel Guide. Pretty much it's Sam Angel Guide, uh,
Yeah,
which makes it nice and
perfect.
simple.
It makes it nice and consistent, doesn't it? Yeah. I think this is just so fascinating to me. It just, and if you really step outside the stories that we all hear and have been told or we see on television or whatever, and you just simplify it to common sense and logic, it
Yeah,
absolutely makes complete and total sense. Yeah. And it's so interesting, and I really appreciate that you bring the awareness that yes, while everything is energy, because these energies at some point were here on earth in some other form, whether that
yeah,
is plant, animal, human, or otherwise, is there the capacity that the energy itself has some less than desirable tainting, shall we say? I think that is a big awareness that many people who delve into spiritual wisdom sometimes may, I don't want to say ignore, but may not put weight to. And just
yeah,
as you yourself said, oh, I didn't realize we actually had demons and negative energy component moving through.
yeah,
I think a lot of people hear the word spirit and think everything's all la-di-da and wonderful. And I think
yeah,
the awareness that things can get caught and stuck is huge, is really important. Yeah,
yeah. And the
yeah,
fact
yeah.
that anyone can do it. You
Yes.
know, you
I
and
think the
it
power of
enhances.
intention.
Yeah, it's all about intention, but it enhances the positive as well.
Hmm.
So you don't
Hmm.
remove the good energy. I had one property and I was shown this wonderful Christmas party. And I have to say, I lingered there for a bit because I was like, I don't want to leave this room. It's so lovely. And so we want to keep that. And space clearing doesn't remove all of the good stuff, it keeps them and enhances it. It just removes the stuff that is holding us back.
Yeah. Fabulous. I love this has been a great talk. This has been so, so informative and so interesting. I love it. So I will put all the contacts and information into the show notes. And for the
Fab, thank you.
listeners, absolutely grab this book and I would certainly say for sure do a grounding meditation that keeps you protected for sure.
There's a
It's
free one on my
so
website. There's a free one on my
yeah.
website. So
Absolutely. Gonna be hopping back over there for sure. So,
cool.
so fascinating. I thank you, Sam. This has just been really
Thank you.
intriguing for me. Wonderful.